Good morning. So what is this series exactly? Well, after my dozen or so times of playing through the Pirate101 story, I realized I haven't really ever read the dialogue. Sure, I know major plot points, but I was never enriched by all the dialogue and story this game has to offer. So that is what we're doing today, and for the next few months. I started a new privateer with the explicit purpose to read all the dialogue of the main story and truly learn why it is what we do. Sit back, relax, as we head into the story of Pirate101, experiencing the nuances you may have overlooked, and endure potential side rants about the relevance to today's world. If you like this format, please consider subscribing, commenting, and liking to show me you're enthralled by the Pirate101 story like I've been. Without further ado, let's sit by the fire and get started. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the I Started Privateer to read all the dialogue in Pirate101 series. You might notice same shirt as Book 8. That's because I'm recording this back to back. But Book 9, how do we start Book 9? We return Sally to Santo Pollo and reunite her with Don Rodrigo, also known as El Toro, and he tells us that we need to find the Friar Cluck so that they can get married right away. We speak to Friar Cluck, who tells us that there's actually someone in the church that wants to speak to us, and once we go in, we see that it's Don Raphael's ghost, who can finally rest at peace now that his daughter and his adopted son are now bonded as they should have been many years ago. And he tells us what he knows about Captain Blood. He actually doesn't have a whole lot to tell us. He doesn't know his base or the map piece that we're talking about, but he does know that in his last battle that the crew mutinied Captain Blood, and they may know. So he directs us to Sly Winkum of Tumbleweed. Once we get to Tumbleweed, we try to find Sly in the nearby tavern, and the bartender there tells us that Sly is actually in the back room being attacked by the Waco gang, and more specifically the Waco Kid or Wacko Kid. And so we go in there, we fight them, and we let Sly know that El Toro sent us. Sly tells us he does know where Blood's lair is, but the way to Haunted Skyway is currently blocked right now by the Wild Bunch, which is part of that's the larger organization behind the Waco Kid and that Waco gang. And while me and Sly are talking shop and trying to make a plan to get past the Wild Bunch, a local kid, Timmy, chimes in saying that he knows how to stop them. And so Timmy tells us the story of the Magnificent Seven.
Back when I was little, this skyway was no fit place for bird or beast. We're no law at all out here. And the rangers wouldn't even show their faces. But that all changed when the Magnificent Seven came to town. They tamed this skyway and made it safe for us settlers. Wyatt Jerp was their leader, the greatest lawman Cool Ranch ever saw. After Wyatt cleaned up Cooper's roost with his fists, he gathered a band of heroes to follow him, each one a legend. There was Wild Bill Peacock. He was the best shot with a rifle there ever was. Except maybe for Miss Jane. That's Calamity Jane Canary to you. Jane can bullseye a silver dollar at 50 yards easy. There's Duck Holiday, the dapper deputy. They say Duck looks death in the face and laughs. And don't forget Buffalo Bill, stronger than an ox, meaner than a mountain lion. Then there's Bat Masterson. He's quiet as a shadow and a better tracker than a bloodhound. They say Bat's from Darkmoor, but his heart's in the right place. Last but not least, Billy the Kid. He was an outlaw till Wyatt showed him the error of his ways. He's fast, crazy fast, and a little crazy too. My pa told me all the stories. How the Seven beat Guacamole and the Red Mole gang, shot Saguaro Slint, caught Sam Bass, and rounded up all the Waltons. Nobody could stop them. The Seven tamed the Savage Skyways for years, but then they went their separate ways. I guess some of them didn't get along. But now, Tumbleweed's been taken over by the Wild Bunch. They're bad, bad folks, but I bet the Seven could whoop them without breaking a sweat.
So that is the story of the Magnificent Seven. We have the classic Wild Wild West gang stopping the other Wild Wild West gang. And Timmy says that Duck Holiday, the dapper Duckman still actually lives nearby in Tumbleweed. So we go to him, and Duck talks vaguely about Wyatt and saying that they all would never be in the same room again, but says if we can convince the others, he'll also join. And our first best bet is with Buffalo Bill, who is a gambling man. And that's what Sly tells us. Sly tells us that Buffalo Bill likes to gamble, and if we can wager something, he'll join us. And so we go to him. We 1v1 his prize fighter, who is Tyson, who Musketeers actually get him as well. So we 1v1 the prize fighter, and that convinces him to join back in the Magnificent Seven, and then he tells us to go to Cooper's Roost to find Bill and Calamity Jane, as they're a couple package. Once we talk to them in their bar, Jane says that she's down to do it, but Wild Bill is a little apprehensive. Then he changes his mind once Jane convinces him. And they tell us to find Bat Masterson, that Darkmoor bat guy, who is actually the manager of the silver mine in Cooper's Roost that we've actually interacted with a couple times before in earlier books. And he says that he will join the Magnificent Seven, but we need to find the strong box that has the miner's wages, and that was stolen. So we go and find that strong box, we return it to him, he can pay his workers, and then he joins us. And so at this point we have 5 of the Magnificent Seven. We have Duck Holiday, Wild Bill, Jane Calamity, Buffalo Bill, and Bat Masterson. And so the last person is Billy the Kid, who was hit, and it's revealed here that Wyatt died, that Wyatt passed away after the events of that puppet show. And Billy the Kid was actually affected by Wyatt's death very hard, and went to war with the Frogorales, and he was put in prison, so we had to free him. Bat Masterson suggests getting the box of dynamite by the docks that he was going to be using for the mines, and we go and raid this prison, this Frogorale prison in Centopoyo. Once we get him, we free him, and we are off back to Tumbleweed to speak to Doc Holliday, because we've assembled the Magnificent Seven. So once we get back to Tumbleweed, we actually don't see Duck Holiday there, but we see Timmy there, who tells us that Duck and Buffalo Bill went to Wyatt Chirp's place, his house on this island. And so we go there with the rest of the Magnificent Seven, and it's the first time in years that all of them are in the same room since Wyatt's passing. And a little argument does start, but then it's kind of qualmed. No one really gets heat or anything, and then the Magnificent Seven nominate us to be the 7th. Before we go to war with the Wild Bunch, we go to Wyatt's grave to pay our respects, and it's here that we are attacked by the Wild Bunch. Once we beat them all, we return to Tumbleweed and we return to Sly to start the Wild Bunch war. And for privateers, interestingly, we get a mercenary named Black Angus, who is also kind of an interesting companion. He gets a promotion. I think he's just getting one promotion, Bison Outlaw. And he's a pretty cool looking companion. I hope he gets reworked as well. But we recruit him for privateers, and then we're off to fight Buck Bronco. We head out to a cave. We have to fight Buck Bronco a couple times actually, and his recruits. And then we return to Sly. He tells us that while we were gone fighting Buck Bronco, the rest of the Wild Bunch actually invaded Tumbleweed and kidnapped Timmy. They kidnapped the child. And the old man Bronco, who is like the father figure of the entire Wild Bunch gang, he calls us out and tells that he's waiting for a final showdown at the old jailhouse. And so we wage war with all of them. It's the Magnificent Seven versus the Wild Bunch. And we go and fight. We fight these recruits. We fight a couple of them. And then it is the final showdown in the cave underneath the jailhouse. It's the 3 Broncos versus us and some of their recruits. And obviously we win that fight. We free Timmy. We return to Sly. And privateers actually recruit Jane and Bill, while other classes recruit other people. Privateers actually get 2 of the companions. So, and they're pretty decent. Jane gets Overwatch 3, True Grit 3, and Wild Bill gets Burst 2 and Tap and True Grit. So you could give them Burst 2, Tap 2, Grit 2, and they get a guaranteed crit hit with this Musketeer's Mastery. So they're not awful. They're definitely usable. So with the Wild Bunch conflict resolved, we can speak to Sly, and he gives us the information about his hideout. And he tells us that Blood's hideout was in the Motherlode mine in Haunted Skyway, but the key to get into the mine is held by the mutiny leader, Sabatini, who has settled in Fort McMurtry, which is the big fort in Haunted Skyway. And that is the end of book 9. Surprisingly, I didn't expect this. I've been recording for 11 and a half minutes. I didn't think that Tumbleweed would be that short, because it seems like a lot goes down, but yeah, it's mostly just it kind of returns to like this ground level where we just fight the Wild Bunch. And it's basically this group versus group, and obviously there's some weird things like Timmy getting kidnapped. But we do get a lot of good companions recruited on Privateer. You get Jane, you get Bill, you get Angus, you get Iago. So a lot of fun side companions that you can use. But yeah, that is the end of book 9, and I will see you once we get to Haunted Skyway in book 10.